There's a difference between accountability and acceleration. And right now, Patrick Roark is sitting in the middle of that difference. The name has already been attached to charges. The court docket is public. The case number exists. The state has alleged financial exploitation, fraudulent schemes, and misuse of a device. That is not rumor. That is documented legal action. But what's happening outside the courtroom is something else entirely. It's faster, it's louder, and it doesn't require evidence. In the last few weeks, the narrative has shifted. It's no longer just about the charges the state brought. It's about new labels being floated online, words that carry a weight far heavier than financial crimes, words that imply predatory behavior, words that, once attached to someone's name, don't wash off, even if unproven. And here's the question that no one seems willing to slow down and ask. Who decides when an accusation becomes a fact? Because if someone has been the victim of a crime, a real crime, the first stop isn't YouTube. It isn't a live stream. It isn't a comment section. It's law enforcement. Criminal conduct is handled by police, prosecutors, and courts, not by content creators. That doesn't mean victims don't deserve to speak. It means serious allegations require serious channels. If someone truly believes they were manipulated, exploited, or coerced in a criminal way, there's a clear path. Document it. File a report. Give it to the detectives already investigating related matters. Let it be evaluated by people trained to distinguish bad behavior from illegal conduct. Because those two things are not the same. Bad character is not automatically a felony. A broken heart is not automatically a criminal case. Being misled in a relationship is not automatically exploitation under statute. And that's where this gets uncomfortable. Several women have said they gave money willingly. They weren't forced. They weren't threatened. They weren't incapacitated. They liked someone. They wanted to help. Maybe they were told promises. Maybe they believed in something that didn't materialize. That's painful, but pain doesn't equal prosecution. The word grooming is now being thrown around casually, as if it applies to any situation where affection and money mix. That's not what the law says. Grooming, in its criminal sense, involves deliberate targeting of vulnerable individuals, often minors or legally incapacitated adults, with the intent to exploit. That's a very specific definition. It requires evidence. It requires documentation. It requires proof of vulnerability and manipulation beyond poor judgment. If adults with capacity make decisions, even foolish ones, that's not automatically a crime. The internet, however, doesn't care about legal thresholds. The internet cares about momentum. And once momentum starts, nuance disappears. It becomes a witch hunt. Not the kind with torches and pitchforks, but the digital kind. Screenshots without context. Titles designed for maximum outrage. Emotional reactions treated as evidence. Here's the irony. Patrick is already under criminal scrutiny for specific financial allegations. The state is prosecuting. A judge is assigned. A bond was set. There's a legal process unfolding. So why the rush to add more? Why layer additional accusations in comment sections instead of affidavits? If the goal is justice, the path is clear. If the goal is punishment, the internet is faster. And that's the uncomfortable tension here. There's a pattern in online communities. When someone becomes the villain of the week, everything negative becomes believable. The bar for proof lowers. The appetite for outrage rises. People who once disagreed on everything suddenly unite under one mission. Take him down. But accountability isn't supposed to look like that. Accountability is structured. It's procedural. It's slow. Mob justice is impulsive. It's emotional. It's contagious. Patrick may very well be guilty of what he's charged with. The court will decide that. He has entered a plea. Evidence will be presented. The state will either meet its burden or it won't. That's how it works. What complicates this moment is that some content creators are positioning themselves as collection points for additional claims, inviting people to come forward publicly instead of privately through law enforcement. And that raises another question. Why? If someone believes they've been a victim of criminal manipulation, the worst place to start is a monetized platform, because then the story becomes content, and content becomes currency, and currency blurs motives. That doesn't mean every person speaking up is lying. It means serious claims deserve serious venues. There's also another uncomfortable reality. People can feel used without being legally exploited. Someone can promise affection and fail to deliver. Someone can imply a future and walk away. Someone can ask for help financially and not repay it. That makes them unreliable. It may make them unethical. It may make them selfish. It does not automatically make them criminal. And conflating those categories does damage, not just to the accused, but to real victims of actual exploitation. When serious terms are diluted and applied loosely, they lose their meaning where they matter most. The anger in this community is real. Some feel betrayed. Some feel embarrassed. Some feel financially drained. Some feel manipulated emotionally. All of that is valid to feel. But turning those feelings into criminal labels without evidence is something else. And here's where it becomes dangerous. If someone accuses another person publicly of a crime they cannot substantiate, that accusation carries legal risk. Defamation laws don't disappear because emotions are high. Allegations require proof. If someone truly believes they have proof, the smartest move isn't a live stream. It's a police report. This entire situation has grown ugly. Lines have blurred between investigation and entertainment, between justice and spectacle. Patrick doesn't need to be liked. He doesn't need to be defended. He needs to be judged on the charges actually brought against him, not on whatever new accusation trends next week. And that standard should apply to anyone. If Eric had credible allegations against him, they too should go to law enforcement, not just float in chat rooms. Consistency matters. If we say hold people accountable, we must mean through legitimate processes, not selective outrage. There's a phrase people like to use: facts aren't defamation. That's true, but suspicions aren't facts. Speculation isn't evidence. Emotional testimony isn't automatically proof of criminal intent. Patrick is under fire. Some of that fire is legal. Some of it is social. Some of it is fueled by anger. Some of it is fueled by content algorithms. The real question is not whether he deserves scrutiny. He's already receiving it. The real question is whether we, as observers, can separate accountability from mob momentum. If someone reading this truly believes they were the victim of a crime, do the right thing. Go to the police. File a complaint. Provide documentation. Let trained investigators determine whether a statute was violated. If what happened was heartbreak, misjudgment, or misplaced trust, that's painful, but it's not prosecutable. We cannot criminalize bad relationships. We cannot turn every broken promise into a felony. And we cannot let outrage decide guilt before the courtroom does. Patrick Roark will answer to the charges the state has filed. That process is underway. Everything else, that's on us. Comment one word: justice or mob? Which direction do you think this is heading? When someone is already facing criminal charges, the environment around them changes. Every action becomes suspicious. Every silence becomes strategic. Every rumor feels plausible. Patrick Roark is currently navigating that environment. The charges filed against him are specific. They involve alleged financial exploitation and fraudulent schemes connected to revenue generated around the Whittaker family. The state of West Virginia has formally stepped in. That alone changes the stakes. It means investigators believed there was enough probable cause to file felony charges. It means a judge reviewed documents. It means the case moved beyond gossip. But here's what often happens once a criminal case becomes public. The court of public opinion doesn't stop at the indictment. It expands. New claims surface. Old grievances resurface. Private disputes get reframed as patterns. And the line between documented allegations and online speculation begins to blur. Right now, that blur is the problem. There are two separate tracks unfolding. Track 1 is legal. Track 2 is digital. The legal track moves slowly. Evidence is gathered. Defense attorneys prepare. Prosecutors organize records. Discovery happens. Hearings are scheduled. Rules of evidence apply. The digital track moves in real time. Screenshots circulate. Titles escalate. Words intensify. Emotional testimony spreads without cross-examination. The danger isn't that people are discussing the case. Public cases are meant to be discussed. The danger is when additional criminal labels get attached without formal complaints, without documentation, without sworn statements. When that happens, the discussion stops being about accountability and starts becoming about amplification. It's important to clarify something uncomfortable. Being accused of one crime does not automatically validate every other accusation. If someone is charged with financial misconduct, that does not make them automatically guilty of emotional manipulation crimes, coercion crimes, or predatory behavior crimes. Each category requires its own evidence, its own elements, its own legal thresholds. The internet collapses categories. The law does not. That difference matters. Several individuals have expressed that they gave Patrick money willingly. Some say they felt emotionally invested. Some say they believed in promises that didn't materialize. Some now regret their decisions. Regret is not evidence of coercion. Feeling misled is not automatically proof of exploitation under statute. To establish criminal exploitation, prosecutors generally must show intent, deception, and often vulnerability on the part of the alleged victim. Adults of sound mind making voluntary financial decisions, even bad ones, complicate that threshold. That doesn't make the behavior ethical. It doesn't make it admirable. It doesn't make it kind. It just makes it harder to criminalize. There's another pattern happening here that deserves scrutiny: escalation language. When someone is disliked, the language used to describe them tends to intensify over time. First, they are irresponsible, then dishonest, then manipulative, then predatory, then something worse. Each step feels justified because the audience is already primed to believe the worst. But legal systems don't operate on escalation. They operate on elements of proof. This is where content creation intersects uncomfortably with justice. Content thrives on conflict. It thrives on revelation. It thrives on phrases like new bombshell, exclusive, what they don't want you to know. Justice thrives on documentation, testimony under oath, and evidence admissible in court. When someone invites alleged victims to come forward publicly instead of directing them immediately to law enforcement, it raises a legitimate question. Is the goal exposure or prosecution? If someone truly believes they've been criminally harmed, exposure is secondary. Accountability through law enforcement is primary. There is a reason the criminal justice system exists. It is imperfect. It is slow. It is frustrating, but it is designed to separate anger from proof. Social media is not designed for that. There's also a psychological layer to consider. When someone becomes the focal point of collective anger, others may reinterpret past experiences through a new lens. Things that once felt ambiguous now feel intentional. Things that once felt mutual now feel manipulative. Things that once felt disappointing now feel exploitative. That reinterpretation doesn't automatically mean the new interpretation is false, But it does mean it should be evaluated carefully, not assumed accurate, because it fits the narrative. And narrative right now is powerful. Patrick is already being described as a scammer in connection with the Whittaker case. He denies wrongdoing and has entered a plea of not guilty. That plea matters. It means he is asserting his right to challenge the state's allegations. In a courtroom, that challenge will require prosecutors to present bank records, communications, timelines, witness testimony. It will require defense attorneys to counter those points. It will require a judge or jury to decide. In comment sections, none of that is required. That's the imbalance. There's also something else happening that deserves attention: selective outrage. If accountability is the goal, it should apply consistently. If allegations are serious enough to warrant investigation, they should be reported regardless of who they involve. But when focus concentrates on one person while ignoring similar patterns elsewhere, it suggests something else may be driving the outrage: personal grievance, rivalry, resentment. That doesn't invalidate legitimate concerns. It just complicates motives. Motives matter when we're deciding whether something is a public safety issue or a public spectacle. Another key distinction must be drawn here: manipulation versus mutual participation. In adult relationships, whether romantic, parasocial, or financial, influence flows both directions. People present themselves strategically. People say what they think others want to hear. People embellish. People omit. People hope. That doesn't automatically constitute grooming or coercion. For grooming to apply in a criminal sense, there must be targeting of someone vulnerable with the intention to exploit them. Vulnerability is not simply loneliness. It is not simply infatuation. It is not simply poor judgment. If someone was truly vulnerable in a legally significant way, cognitively impaired, financially incapacitated, dependent in a structured way, that changes the analysis entirely. And if that is the case, it absolutely belongs in a police report. But broadening the term to cover every situation where money and affection mixed risks weakening it where it matters most. There's also a fairness principle that applies even to unpopular defendants. Due process is not a reward for good character. It is a protection for all character. When we allow online escalation to pre-convict someone socially for crimes not yet charged, we undermine the same system that protects actual victims when they seek justice. This doesn't mean Patrick is innocent. It doesn't mean accusers are lying. It means accusations deserve the correct venue. If someone has screenshots, bank transfers, recorded communications showing coercion or threats, that evidence should be preserved and given to law enforcement. If someone simply feels misled or disappointed, that's a separate category. Both experiences are valid emotionally. Only one is prosecutable legally. There is also an ethical responsibility among content creators. When serious allegations are sent privately, the responsible first response is not, "Let's go live." It is, "Have you reported this to the police?" Anything else risks turning potential victims into content assets. That's a hard sentence to hear, but it's necessary. Patrick Roark may ultimately be convicted of the charges he currently faces. He may be acquitted. The evidence will decide that. But piling on additional unverified criminal labels before investigation does not strengthen accountability. It muddies it. And once mud spreads, it's difficult to separate what was proven from what was amplified. This moment is bigger than one person. It's about how online communities handle serious accusations. Do we channel them toward proper authorities? Or do we monetize them? Do we distinguish between unethical behavior and illegal conduct? Or do we collapse them for impact? Patrick is under fire. That fire includes legitimate legal scrutiny. It also includes digital escalation. The outcome of his case will be decided in a courtroom. The outcome of the mob dynamic will be decided by us. Comment one word: process or punishment. Which do you believe should come first? There is something the internet rarely admits out loud. It enjoys a downfall, not justice, not truth, not accountability. Downfall. The shift is subtle but powerful. A person moves from controversial to condemned in a matter of headlines. Once that shift happens, nuance disappears. Motive no longer matters. Context no longer matters. Even evidence becomes secondary to momentum. Patrick Roark is now inside that momentum. The arrest created a baseline narrative. Something illegal may have happened involving money connected to the Whittaker family. That narrative is anchored to court records. It has a case number. It has charges. It has a bond amount. That part is formal. Everything beyond that baseline is where things get unstable. When a person becomes publicly accused, especially in a community already emotionally invested, people begin revisiting the past, looking for confirmation. Old clips are rewatched. Old live streams are reinterpreted. Old messages are recontextualized. That process can uncover real red flags. It can also create patterns that didn't exist before the lens changed. Confirmation bias is powerful. Once someone is believed to be dishonest in one area, it becomes easier to believe they were dishonest in all areas. That belief may ultimately be correct, but belief is not proof. The Whittaker story carries emotional weight. Vulnerability, poverty, disability, isolation. Those elements trigger protectiveness in viewers. When money becomes involved around vulnerable people, anger is almost guaranteed. That anger is understandable. Exploitation of a vulnerable is one of the few issues that creates near universal outrage. But outrage is not evidence. The state has alleged financial exploitation of an elderly or incapacitated person. That specific language matters. It suggests investigators believe there were vulnerable individuals involved. If prosecutors can prove that funds intended for those individuals were diverted unlawfully, that is a crime, and it is serious. But when online discourse moves from financial exploitation to unrelated accusations of predatory behavior toward unrelated adults, the categories are no longer aligned. It is critical to separate three different things: alleged financial crimes tied to vulnerable individuals, alleged interpersonal manipulation between consenting adults, general dislike or distrust of someone's character. Only the first category currently exists in formal charges. The second category requires specific evidence and specific complainants willing to engage law enforcement. The third category is opinion. Right now, those three categories are being blended together in public conversation. Blending them increases emotional intensity, but decreases clarity. There's also another uncomfortable truth. Sometimes communities project. When someone disappoints us, especially someone we defended, supported, or trusted, the emotional reaction can be disproportionate. It becomes personal. It feels like betrayal. That betrayal seeks validation. One way validation happens is through escalation. If the person wasn't just wrong, but dangerous, then the emotional investment feels justified. The stronger the accusation, the stronger the validation. But stronger accusations require stronger proof. The word grooming has legal and psychological weight. It is not a synonym for flirting. It is not a synonym for emotional inconsistency. It is not a synonym for asking for financial help. Grooming, in a criminal context, typically involves building trust with someone vulnerable, often a minor, to exploit them. Expanding that term to describe adult relationship disappointments dilutes its seriousness. If someone believes they were groomed in a legally meaningful way, the path is clear: law enforcement, documented communication, sworn statements. If someone believes they were emotionally misled or financially naive, that is a painful experience, but it is not automatically criminal. The difference is not about defending Patrick. It is about preserving language so that when real grooming happens, the word retains force. Another factor that complicates this situation is timing. Patrick's legal vulnerability right now creates asymmetry. He is under scrutiny. His communications are likely limited. His public statements are constrained by counsel. That makes him an easy target for additional allegations because he cannot easily respond. Silence in legal strategy often looks like admission online. It is not. Defense attorneys frequently advise clients not to comment publicly while charges are pending. That silence protects the legal case, not the reputation. Unfortunately, in the age of instant reaction, silence damages reputation. That imbalance fuels escalation. There is also the issue of equal application. If accountability is the goal, scrutiny should apply to everyone who generated revenue connected to the Whittaker family. Anyone who monetized that content should be transparent about revenue sharing, agreements, and disbursements. Selective focus creates suspicion that personal conflicts are driving the intensity. It is fair to ask, were written agreements in place? Were revenue splits documented? Were tax obligations clarified? Were the Whittakers given access to statements? Those are legitimate questions in any monetized partnership involving vulnerable individuals. Those questions belong in civil discovery and criminal investigation, not rumor cycles. There is a risk when communities blur legal accusation with moral condemnation. Legal guilt requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Moral condemnation requires none. It requires only consensus. Consensus can be wrong. History has shown repeatedly that public consensus often outpaces evidence. Once labels stick, even acquittal cannot fully erase them. That reality cuts both ways. If Patrick is ultimately convicted, the online community will feel validated. If he is acquitted, some will still believe the broader accusations because emotional narratives are harder to reverse than legal ones. This is why precision matters now. It is also important to examine incentives. Content creators operate in an environment where engagement drives visibility. Controversy drives engagement. Serious allegations drive intense engagement. That creates a structural tension between restraint and reach. Restraint rarely trends, but restraint protects credibility. If someone is truly harmed, encouraging them to pursue legal remedy is protective. Encouraging them to participate in public call-outs before law enforcement review can compromise potential cases. Evidence should be preserved, not performed. The Whittaker family itself remains central in this story. They are not abstract characters. They are real people whose lives have been altered by attention. If funds were misappropriated, they deserve restitution. If funds were properly distributed, that should be documented. If adults made voluntary choices they regret, that should be acknowledged without criminal inflation. There is also the human dimension of Patrick himself. Being accused of financial exploitation is severe. Being labeled a groomer publicly without formal charges is life-altering. Even if untrue, those labels follow people. The justice system is designed to protect against irreversible reputational harm by requiring evidence before conviction. The internet is not designed for that. This is not an argument for sympathy. It is an argument for structure. When anger becomes directionless, it stops serving justice and starts serving momentum. Momentum feels powerful. It feels unified. It feels righteous. But righteousness without restraint can produce collateral damage. If there are additional victims of criminal behavior, they should absolutely be heard. They should absolutely be protected. They should absolutely be supported in pursuing legal action. But support does not require spectacle. The core question right now is not whether Patrick deserves scrutiny. He does. He is charged. The question is whether scrutiny will remain anchored to evidence or drift into accusation inflation. Mob justice begins not with lies, but with impatience. Impatience with courts. Impatience with evidence. Impatience with process. Real accountability takes time, and time is uncomfortable. So here is the moment of decision for this community. Do we want convictions or confessions extracted by pressure? Do we want restitution or reputational destruction? Do we want truth or escalation? The legal system will answer one part of this story. The digital community will answer the other. Comment one word, evidence or emotion, which should drive what happens next. There's a stage in every online controversy where the tone changes. It stops being about facts. It stops being about victims. It stops even being about the accused. It becomes about power. Who controls the narrative? Who frames the story? Who decides what is believed before a courtroom ever speaks? That's where this situation now sits. Patrick Roark is facing criminal charges. That part is no longer rumor. It's formal. The state has alleged financial exploitation and fraudulent schemes connected to revenue generated around the Whittaker family. That is serious. If proven, it carries consequences that will follow him for life. But here's where the line must be drawn clearly. Criminal charges filed by the state are one thing. Community expansion of unrelated allegations is another. When new accusations surface online, especially allegations that carry heavy moral weight, they must meet the same standard. Evidence, documentation, law enforcement involvement. Otherwise, the internet becomes investigator, prosecutor, judge, and jury all at once. And history shows that rarely ends cleanly. There's also a practical danger in overextension. If every grievance is escalated to the most severe possible label, legitimate victims lose clarity. Real criminal behavior becomes harder to distinguish from interpersonal fallout. The signal gets buried in noise, and noise helps no one. If someone was financially exploited, they deserve justice. If someone was criminally manipulated, they deserve prosecution of the offender. If someone was emotionally misled, they deserve honesty, but that is not automatically criminal. Precision protects victims. Inflation weakens them. There is also the question of selective outrage. If the principle is accountability for monetizing vulnerable people, then scrutiny must apply broadly. Anyone who generated income connected to the Whitakers should be transparent about revenue splits, agreements, and distribution. If the focus narrows only to the person currently charged, while ignoring similar structures elsewhere, then it stops being principle and starts being personal. And personal battles dressed as moral crusades are easy to spot. The internet rewards intensity. It does not reward patience. But patience is what justice requires. The court case will unfold through motions, hearings, and evidence review. That process is slow. It is procedural. It is often boring. But boring is where truth is tested. Outside that courtroom, however, reputations are already shifting. Sponsors watch. Platforms watch. Audiences watch. And every new allegation, proven or not, adds weight. This is why words matter right now more than ever. The difference between, "I believe he hurt me," and "he is a criminal." The first invites investigation. The second declares a verdict. That distinction is not technical. It is foundational. The Whittaker family deserves clarity. The public deserves transparency. The accused deserves due process. All three can exist at the same time. If Patrick is guilty, the evidence will establish it. If he is not guilty of certain allegations, the absence of proof should matter. Mob justice thrives on certainty. Real justice tolerates uncertainty until proof arrives. And here is the uncomfortable reality. Communities sometimes confuse intensity with righteousness. But righteousness without discipline becomes chaos. Right now, the question is not whether Patrick should be scrutinized. He already is. The question is whether this community can separate legal accountability, moral disappointment, personal resentment, and unverified escalation. Because if everything becomes everything, then nothing means anything. Justice becomes noise, and noise protects no one. So before the next post, before the next video, before the next accusation, ask one question. Is this advancing truth or just amplifying anger? Comment one word. Process or punishment? Which matters more right now? There is a difference between accountability and annihilation. Patrick Roark is facing criminal charges. That process is active. It belongs in a courtroom, under oath, with evidence tested and challenged. Everything else is secondary. If he broke the law will respond. If others were involved, investigations will reveal it. If people feel wronged but not criminally harmed, that is painful, but pain alone is not proof. The Whittaker family deserves protection from exploitation. Accusers deserve to be heard responsibly, and the accused deserves due process. Mob justice feels powerful. Real justice feels slow, but only one of them holds up over time. If you care about the Whittakers, about fairness, about truth, then the standard has to be consistent for everyone. No witch hunts, no automatic absolutions, no shortcuts, only evidence. Comment below. Do you believe this is becoming accountability or becoming chaos? And whatever side you land on, ask yourself one last thing. If it were you in the center of the storm, what standard would you want applied? Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.